everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dojo Live this Thursday, July 28th, 2022. My name is Kim Lantis, and it's my pleasure to be hosting for you today. Joining me as co-host is America Guerrero.
Hey Anton, hey
America.
Kim.
Hey, and today's guest, I think he's with us. He looks a little pixelated, somewhat frozen. There, we can hear you. My image isn't catching up quite yet, but we'll go for it. There you are. Perfect. Today's guest, the most important person of today's show, is Anton Pleshivtsev. I practiced this and now I'm murdering it. Pleshivtsev, who is the VP of Engineering at Bravado. Anton, thank you so much for joining us today. We good?
Thank you for
just when
having
we need
me.
it.
Excited to be here.
There it is. Perfect. I apologize. I think there is a delay. You were joining us all the way from Armenia, I think at 11 o'clock at night. So we do thank you for that. If there is a slight delay, we'll just kind of get in the habit of waiting a bit after we finish talking to let that catch up. So we're here to talk about specifically small engineering teams and the challenges that presents. But before we do that, we'd like to get to know you better, please, Anton. If you could please share about your background, your passion, and kind of what led up to your time with Bravado. Thank you.
Of course. So this is the 6th year I'm working for Bravado. I was the first engineer in a company, so I basically built the very first proof of concepts that was kind of basically the backbone of the product that we are currently building.
Wow.
And I was actually kind of the very full stack engineer. I was doing DevOps, backend, front-end stuff, like hiring people a year later and stuff like that. But this is not something that I was doing since the very beginning, because a background with my previous companies. So on my previous company called Viral, I was working as a widget developer. So the company was doing something called in-text advertising. It's when you scroll some text and you see how it expands and you can see a short video. And I was working on the similar thing, but for mobile devices. And for mobile devices, there is a problem that there is no autoplay and stuff like that, and you have to figure out how to do this autoplay. So I basically created the whole codec for mobile devices with a series of images, and it was kind of emulating the video, and which kind of gave the company the second stream. So you basically have the 100% views on desktop devices, and then you have the same number of views on mobile devices, which was huge. Before that, I was basically leading the front-end department in Aviasales and Jet Radar. It is a huge Russian company developing flight ticket search engine. You guys probably know something like Kayak, maybe Skyscanner. It's basically search engine and the filters that you can apply to find cheapest flights. So I joined the company in 2012. I was developing some UI widgets, some UI related stuff. Then I was involved in development of the new search engine, and I was also living in Thailand. So the interesting thing about the company is the office is located on Phuket Island. And as someone who was living the whole life, I was living in a very northern part of Russia. I moved to Thailand, and I was living there for almost 3 years, which is kind of an interesting experience. And so yeah, this kind of taught me a few interesting things. Basically, how important it is to be flexible, how important it is to be a full stack engineer, something that is also called T-shaped specialist. When you can do like backend, front end, you can do QA, you can go and bring some pizza, you can you can be a PM, you can be a designer, so you can basically be everything. And this is actually the culture that we are focusing on at Bravado. So we are basically trying to find people like this.
Okay, so that is the tactic. Aha! You have revealed a little bit of insight into the topic that you chose today. Before we get to that topic specifically, let's learn a little bit more about Bravado. Who are you as a company, and what's the problem that you're solving?
So we are usually naming Bravado as GitHub for sales. So there are a bunch of vertical, also known as professional social networks. For example, GitHub for programmers, or there is Dribble for designers, or there is Doximity for doctors. It's basically a social network designed specifically for one type of job, right?
Right.
And you know what is interesting? The interesting thing is that there are about 10 to 12 million salespeople in the United States, and yet there is no professional network for them. Even though
we just take over LinkedIn.
I mean, yeah, this is a good example. You can always mention LinkedIn, but I would say LinkedIn is kind of general purpose network, because on LinkedIn you can find designers, you can find engineers, you can find doctors, you can find salespeople. But I think we can touch it later. But on LinkedIn, you cannot find a salesperson who has experience selling for Coca-Cola, or you cannot find a salesperson with an experience of closing deals for $500,000. Or so it's basically hard to kind of apply very specific filters on LinkedIn. And you have to find like hundreds, thousands of people. You have to collect you have to handle hundreds of interviews to collect a lot of resumes from these people. And then only based on these resumes, you have to make a decision on who to hire. On Bravado, you can do this as simple as just a few clicks. You're basically applying a bunch of filters, and you can get, like, let's say you need someone in New York metropolitan area with an experience in food tech. You need someone who has experience with closing deals like $200,000 on average with OT and base salary like this. You can apply all these filters and get a very specific set of people who are interested in joining a new company, looking for a new opportunity, and you can start talking to them immediately. You're basically saving like months of job of the whole recruiting team by just using Bravado.
Nice. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a very good explanation of who you are, what you do, and why. So let's talk about the topic, going back to you specifically, jack of all trades, started out front-end engineer and all whatever else, and now you're the VP of engineering. To tell us about what is that topic today?
The topic is Challenges of a Small Engineering Team Revolutionizing Sales. And the question is, how many engineers do you need to create a GitHub for sales? So please share with us more about this question, why you choose this topic, why is it important for today's show?
So to start with, I think we started the company in a very interesting time. We basically started the company right before the pandemic started. And the pandemic applied some kind of new challenges, some kind of new limitations to what we do. And since we had some time before the pandemic, we were doing some decisions about how to run the company, what should be the principles on which we are building the company, what rules we should have. Should it be like a company focused, located in some single place? Should it be a remote company? And I think we gave the answers that we gave for these questions were, right now looking at the past, I think we kind of predicted the future, because the very fundamental thing that we decided is that we will build a very remote centric company. And it's not like remote friendly, it is remote centric, meaning that we have people all around the world, and we have everything shaped in a way that it is comfortable for remote employees. Meaning that every meeting, every process, every messenger, every decision is made taking into account that we have people all around the world. And I'm not only talking about different time zones, I'm also talking about people speaking different languages, people living in different cultures, different countries, having different issues. And when the pandemic started, we already implemented this principle. And this helped us to, so when the pandemic was already happening and we had like closed borders, like no traveling, our company was already adopted for this world. And for us, nothing changed. Like we didn't notice that something changed. I have seen other companies like doing layoffs or like doing changes to make some remote work more comfortable. For us, we were just doing our job, and I think this was a huge advantage for Bravado.
Very
Nice.
cool. Yeah, and I think that's exactly that. The challenges of the pandemic, the challenges I think of being, I love that term, remote centric versus remote friendly. It's quite interesting. You did mention a vast variety of people who work at Bravado. This isn't all roles, I'm understanding, whether that goes from the engineering team to talent and recruitment to everyone. It's completely remote centric.
So we have, initially the company was kind of centered around 2 locations. We had business located in San Francisco in the Valley, and we had development around St. Petersburg, because I was living in St. Petersburg and I did our first engineering hires from my personal professional network. And since I was working with people from Thailand, we did some hires in Thailand and we did some hires in kind of these locations. The United States started scaling in a way that, first of all, we started hiring not only in the Bay Area, we started hiring all across the country. So we have, this is actually funny. I recently asked the question, what state do you guys think is the best? And we had people from, I guess, 12, maybe 15 states, and everyone was saying their state was the best. So we are remote in terms of US, and we are also remote in terms of world, because right now, today, we already have people from Thailand, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Nigeria, Spain, Brazil, United States, and India. I
Wow.
guess this is
And
the
growing.
countries. Yeah,
That's amazing.
growing, yes.
So let's go back to your perspective. You alluded to this earlier today, particularly as the VP of engineering. And you mentioned something about your goal of finding and hiring, or maybe even creating, specifically full stack engineers, right? These, and some might argue these unicorns. But what would be your, if we could go back to some of the decisions as to why that's your plan of attack and how you think that that's, great in order to maintain a smaller engineering team. And then, of course, come back to this topic of what challenges is that, what problems might that present, and also the solutions that you found to solve them.
All right, imagine we need to build something new. We need to launch a new product. What people do you usually need? You usually need a PM to describe the problem, prepare some product. I'm describing a very classic way of releasing things. You need a PM who will manage the process, prepare some product brief, describe the problem, and discuss the solution with the team. You need a designer who can prepare a beautiful UI with like beautiful buttons, usable things. You also need someone who can prepare front-end part of this thing, which is basically the HTML or maybe mobile UI of the product. And you probably need a backend person who can implement some REST, JSON APIs for the project. I'm talking mostly specifically about our case. You will also probably need a QA person to make sure everything works right. And now you end up having 6 people, and now you need to add one more because the communication becomes so hard that you need to manage, and you need to spend time doing like estimations, you need to do planning, you need to do like retro calls and stuff like that. You also need to resolve conflicts. lead discussions. And now imagine if all these 6 roles can be combined in a single person. I know this sounds like a miracle. Probably it's like 1 out of 1,000,000. But if this is achievable, imagine all this communication happens inside a head of this person with the speed of light. You don't need to spend days and weeks for communication, for discussions, conflicts. The person can make all the decisions, all the things in his own head in just few seconds and figure out solution. And this is something that is, of course, I'm describing kind of the ideal case, but probably it is possible to find the person who can do both front end, back end, and QA, right? Or it is possible to find PM who can also do design and kind of do this at once. And by doing this, you are saving huge amount of time, and the whole development process becomes extremely, extremely efficient.
Nice. So, I mean, obviously, I think to clarify here, to find a 6-in-1 individual is probably near impossible, right? But your proposition would be to find, a 2-in-1, a 3-in-1, or
yeah. So finding 6-in-1 is a huge luck.
Yes.
I probably know just a few, and these people are super rich, so they will not probably join a shitty small startup. But it is doable if you want to find a person who can combine 2 or 3 of these roles in a single person. I think we have. So from my experience, if you want to hire a good engineer, you have to talk to approximately 100 people. If you need to find a great full stack person, you need to find 10 great people. So you basically need to talk to 1,000 people. So it increases the funnel for you significantly. And it's not that simple. And this is why it is important not to stop your hiring process at any time. You should always filter people coming to you, talk to them, ask what they're interested in, what company they want to work for, what type of problems they want to solve. And at some point, you will find these people.
And in the meantime, you have, we hope, a great team who's able to keep things running while you wait for the individual. How do you go about knowing, or your team or the process to identify that great person? Like, because I'm going to play the devil's advocate here a little bit. How do you make sure that this isn't a jack of all trades who is a master of none? Right? Does that make sense? My question of so it's not just somebody who's a little good at a lot of things, but to find the person who's really good at 2 or 3.
Like an logistic. Is that the word?
The logistics of it, or like what's the process that you use or your team uses to sort of search out these individuals? Maybe is there like a trick you have in a task or a recruitment process, or a question that helps you really feel confident in your choices when you're looking for these stars?
This is a great question, and I can share one interesting trick here. So there is a popular messenger called Telegram. You know this messenger, right? And so they have a very, very small team, but they're still delivering a lot of features, a lot of interesting updates. They handle like billions of messages every day. So now it's a question, how do they operate at this scale? And they have just a few engineers. And the way they find these people, they are running kind of a programming contest. And the idea of a contest, you have to basically, let's say you have to build the new client for Telegram, or you need to build a new API. So you basically need to handle the whole new product for them, or maybe the whole new direction for their business. And the prize is pretty impressive. You can basically win like tens of thousands of dollars. So it is definitely worth trying. And I have seen very, very good people coming to competing with each other to win the prize. And the kind of one of the final prizes, you can join the team, which is also bringing people closer to the goal of joining the team. And the company is also receiving great people. Of course, we are not the company at the scale of Telegram, but I think this practice is pretty interesting in terms of getting a very, very talented people. The way we adopted this process for us, we took a really hard problem that we were solving internally, and we extracted this problem into a project. And now every engineer who wants to join Bravado, he's kind of solving the same problem. And we are estimating this person, and we are comparing this person with our own solution, our own engineers. And actually, we are all only trying to hire people who did better job than ourselves. So we are trying to constantly raise the bar.
That's very, very interesting. The idea of making a competition or even gamifying in some way your recruitment process. I had never heard of that approach before. Another question I have for you, and this is touching on let's call it the multiculturality of your team. My assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, my assumption is that the language that Bravado is using is English, right? I'm guessing that that's your universal kind of company language. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then also,
yes,
what
this
might be
is true.
Okay, and what might be some challenges that you faced in terms of just cultural differences that might not be recognized? Let's say individuals who come from a culture where they're accustomed to be very direct communicators who might come off as abrasive or rude to individuals who come from cultures where the communication tends to be not so direct and you have to be softer and read between the lines, or cultures that come from perspectives of like leadership is, an authority and I have to wait my turn and I need to be asked before I can give an opinion, versus, cultures where it's more likely that, I expect for you to speak up and things like that. So what are some of the challenges that you've come across and how do you go about solving those in terms of culture?
Have you seen an image showing like how do Americans and Eastern Europeans see the same thing? It's like something
I've
you
seen
show,
many
and
images.
when Americans see, they're like, "Wow, this is amazing! This is the best thing in the world." And when Eastern Europeans see, they just say, "Well, this is fine." So this is kind of the difference. And this, at first glance, this can look like this is something rude or non-polite. And in fact, I think this is, first of all, this is fine. People quickly get used to it. But it is also important to give a very fair and direct feedback if you don't want to ruin your colleagues' efforts. So there is a book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott, describing exactly the same problem. And the problem that she describes is that if you are not giving this direct type of feedback, you are probably not helping your colleague, but you're basically ruining his job and making it more complicated. And so our approach here, we are running, we call them feedback sessions. So we repeat some kind of rules so that the feedback should be direct. You should bring the problem statement. You should bring a few examples when you notice the problem. Ideally, you should also bring a solution. And you shouldn't like say in some kind of nice words. You should say it as is. And by doing this, you kind of remove these boundaries between cultures, and people start being more direct, more fair with each other. And it actually helps people to fix their behavior. And I think this is something that helps us to work with this kind of multicultural thing.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like there's the direct communication, but what I'm hearing, and that what really taking a step back and what underlies that is the team agreement, where you come into it and everybody says, this is the way we do things and this is what you can expect. And I think really that might be the key. And our team agreement is we're going to be direct. And so I think that's spectacular. We're coming to the final minutes of today's show. So we've got team agreements, we've got direct communication. You have taking your time, I think, with the recruitment process, being creative with that recruitment process, and even getting, not prospects, but candidates sort of heavily involved in who you are before they're even a part of your team. What else would you say that going to the company culture of Bravado makes you unique, makes you successful, and is something that was another final kind of key ingredient to having a small engineering team?
The answer is simple. It's just one word. It is transparency. This is something that I would say we started from transparency. I was working with some of my colleagues previously, and we noticed that a lot of problems that we faced on our previous companies, all of them were related to the lack of transparency. So, for example, we had a case when people just didn't receive their salaries, and then they realized company went bankrupt. And this was like a surprise for everyone. And this is kind of the interesting consequence of company not being transparent enough with their employees. Of course, company shouldn't share budgets, even though Bravado does this. And the approach that we are following here at Bravado, every employee knows how company is doing, what is the wrong way. Of course, this is private for company employees, but
Right.
they still know like the runway. They still know like our plans, any changes. So it's not that you one day you will just know that company has issues or company becomes rich. They know this. They are the first people knowing these news. And transparency also helps you to build extremely high level of trust between your employees, because you have no kind of secrets between different departments, different people in a company. I haven't seen any conflicts in Bravado. So again, I do believe transparency is the key.
That's great. And I would agree. I mean, here we utilize that with, we tend to have a monthly all hands, right? Where each area of the company is given sort of a lightning talk element of they present where they're at, what they're planning to do the month in question. And then we do that quarterly as well, right? With did we hit our goals? Didn't we hit our goals? And general sort of announcements and things like that. Is that sort of your approach, or is there a different way in which you help maintain transparency?
So I would say it's like I believe the way you describe it's like more general. Like here is what we planned for this month. Here is what we achieved. In Bravado, we are sharing way more private data. Like here is the number of users we got this month. Here is the revenue we made. Like the plan was this big, we made this big. Like there is a difference. Because of this difference, here is what we're gonna do. So
Yeah.
I believe it's like it's even more than just sharing plans.
Yeah, I guess maybe I didn't explain myself clearly. Yes, we do in our all hands as well present certain KPIs, and was it a hit or a miss, and how are we going to react to whatever that was. Yeah. That's great. I love it. So final words of wisdom. In your time here, starting out Bravado, what did you do? What would you say that you, as one of the leaders, has done correctly, or even as a company? What have you done right, and what is one thing that maybe looking back you could have or should have done differently?
I believe the best thing that I did is I managed to bring amazing people to the company, because everything that is done at Bravado is done by our people. And if I brought the wrong people, it was just a different product, you know. And the people that are currently working at a company, I see such an impact and such a huge contribution. Here is a funny story. I was traveling with one of engineers, and we were driving all day long, and closer to the evening, we had a few beers, and I was like scrolling my feed, and he was doing something in front of his computer for a few hours. I was like, well, what are you doing? He was, well, I'm fixing something for SEO because I think it's super important for us it is super important to be fixed in the next few days. I was super impressed by this. It's like, it is the true involvement in the process, and it is the contribution that we are getting from our engineers.
The loyalty.
Loyalty,
And
exactly.
loyalty and going above and beyond, I think, is Congratulations. Congratulations. Very great. Well, thank you. We come to the end of our half hour today. Anton, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us at the wee hours of the night. we certainly appreciate it. I wish you, as well as Bravado, nothing but success. Stay with us just a few minutes after we go off air. But before we do, America, we have a special announcement for what's happening tomorrow. What's that?
Yes, tomorrow we're going to have a panel, Accessibility, the Future of Tech. And this conversation, we're going to have it with Jennifer Porcel. She is the lead product designer at The Last Game Board, Stephanie Anaya, UI UX designer at Encore, and Luis Talamante, UI UX designer at Encore.
That's right. This is part of an extension of our People Matters panel as we're diving deeper into DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion here at Dojo Live, where tech companies can learn and apply those elements as well. So catch it at 12 o'clock Pacific. Thank you, Anton, one more time. And everyone, till tomorrow, stay safe.